By now, most of us know something about drones, the promise, the problems, and the controversy surrounding unmanned aerial vehicles. But drones are no longer limited to the skies. Big minds backed with big money are now looking to the sea. British-based engine giant Rolls-Royce is working to develop drone cargo ships. The European Union is funding a $4.8 million study of unmanned vessels, and the US Navy has just announced the launch of its first destroyer that has a mind of its own. The new USS Zumwalt was designed to prepare itself for battle and lock onto targets all by itself. It will require a crew, but only about half the hands of other ships its size. So what is the future of drone ships, and how would they impact the world's $375 billion shipping industry, one that currently delivers 90% of world trade? I'm joined now by John Murray from London. He is the Marine Director at the International Chamber of Shipping, which represents about 80% of the world's merchant tonnage. John, thanks for joining us.
Good evening.
This seems to be the stuff of science fiction, ships traveling by themselves across the sea. No sailors, completely automatic. How would they work?
It is a very interesting idea. It's at this stage, I think, for commercial shipping, it's probably an academic idea. I believe many years down the line. There are a lot of questions that would be raised before they could be used, but that doesn't mean to say the questions can't and shouldn't be asked. It's just at the moment that we're not too sure even what all the questions are, never mind what the answers might be.
So how long down the line are we looking? I mean, when will we see these ships traversing the seas, delivering cargo all over the world?
At some future point, that may be a possibility, but there are a number of obvious questions that have to be asked initially. And bearing in mind, you introduced this by making reference to aeroplane drones. They operate in very specific conditions. In civil airspace, they're well segregated from commercial aircraft. In the military world and in war zones, well, obviously they're very different conditions to that the commercial shipping operate in. There is a very high attrition rate with aerial drones. Compare that with the very necessary but already achieved safety record of commercial shipping. Clearly, we can't replace manned shipping with something that has a high accident rate. It would be not acceptable on any count at all. The questions that would have to be asked, and I note your reference to the American military vessel, which has partial automation. And I think partial automation is something that obviously has already started at sea and will continue developing, but it has to be done in the light of pragmatic realities, and it has to be done in conjunction with regulation and legislation which governs the international shipping industry, and for it to be adopted commercially, it has to make financial sense.
Right, and these developments or plans as they are right now, are they being embraced by the shipping industry, or do you find that there is some resistance to it?
I think for the shipping industry as such, the question hasn't really arisen yet, and you're quite correct that there are some people who are, not surprisingly, Rolls-Royce you've mentioned, are behind developing ideas to go forward with this. But I don't think yet it has gone much beyond ideas, and it's very difficult for an industry, the shipping industry in this case, to have a particular view or position on something that doesn't actually exist. Clearly, if you're a commercial ship operator and somebody comes up with a proposal to enhance or do your business in a different way, you're going to listen because it may give you a commercial edge. But there are so many aspects to this that would need to be resolved before you could actually implement it, that it is too early to have a clear industry position on.
And I'm just wondering, when we talk about automation of any kind, we're talking about removing people from doing that job. How will labor respond to this, or how are they responding to it? The unions, what are they saying, if anything?
Again, it's not a conversation as yet that we have had, and I do not know whether the unions have had that at all yet either. But certainly, if your business is representing workforce that might be replaced, it's fairly easy to anticipate what the reaction might be. And it's not just unions. There are countries around the world, many in Southeast Asia, but not just there, who have a significant part of their economy is based on labour supply, and a significant part of that to commercial shipping. So arguably, and it's reasonable to anticipate that those countries would have a view on that matter. And those are, when you look at the cost benefit of something, those types of things are elements that contribute to having to look at the issue in the round rather than just one aspect of it. There are potential interesting aspects, but things such as onboard maintenance, ships have a lot of processes going on board while at sea, cargo maintenance, preparing cargo tanks if you're a tanker, chemical tanker, it's tank washing and preparing tanks. On other types of cargo ships, there are other cargo operations. There's onboard maintenance goes on a daily basis on board, and obviously the availability of manpower to respond to emergencies on board is something that we currently have. How you address all those requirements under an automated system hasn't been addressed, or hasn't been raised, and that hasn't been discussed, to my knowledge.
Right, you mentioned cost benefit. Let's talk money now. Would these drones represent a huge saving for shipping companies? I mean, how much will shipping companies save, and where exactly would that savings come from?
Again, until there are firm proposals, it's very difficult to see. Clearly, if you purely look at the financial cost of replacing a crew with a piece of machinery, that's a fairly simple calculation to make depending on the type of crew and size of crew that you're replacing. There are other costs though, because as I understand it, there would be the need to take on a berthing crew when a ship arrived off a port. So that is a cost to offset against the savings. But as I said, there are many issues to take into account of, be it cargo preparation, be it ship maintenance, and therefore there will be costs that are incurred through the automation that offset the clear safety, the clear cost savings through reduced crew. Whether or not the system can be demonstrated to be safe and to meet current safety and performance standards is a question that would need to be seen. So before a commercial ship operator, I believe, would entertain looking at this seriously, if indeed the technology can be demonstrated to meet the aspirations. Those and other questions that I haven't particularly considered even at this stage would need to be resolved.
Right, you mentioned safety, and you know, we've seen a lot of ships, cargo ships, being hijacked off the African coast. Now you're going to have ships, possibly at one stage, which have no crew at all. Does this increase the chances of piracy on the high seas?
This is an area that would be of concern, in that in areas where piracy is a problem, ships have established processes. There's a system called the best management practices that prepares ships to self-defend against piracy in conjunction with other resources. All of that would need to be reconsidered in the light of if you had nobody on board the ship, and at first sight it would make it appear that such a ship would be an easier target. Once such a ship was taken over by pirates or other security threat bodies, the ship clearly would be totally at their beck and call to go and do whatever it was that those people wanted it to do. So yes, it would be a serious issue that would need to be considered and satisfactorily resolved.
John Murray, Marine Director at the International Chamber of Shipping. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.